So let's review putting this thing back together in reverse order of the way we took it apart. So I put the head back, I put the four nuts and bolts on there. I put this air canister back, I put these back and connected these two small hoses to the head so you don't forget. Then I went on ahead and make these connections. You know, remember these as just, I put those two back and those two, the bottom side of it, I put those two back. And then I went on ahead and start to mount these, but it's not fully mounted. So don't forget the gasket, the skinny gasket. It really does go only one direction. The smaller side is on the top and the bigger hole is on the bottom. And not only that, there are two holes that this bolt goes through. If you reverse it, it won't line up. So you gotta place it the right direction and then the hole should fit. So and I hand screw these two bolts first. Align and hand screw them so that the gasket can hold up between those two screws. And then I went on ahead and start to remember that mount screw that it's back here where my fingers is showing. And I put those in and hand tighten those, and then I'm gonna start using the wrench. I think it was a size 10 millimeter wrench to tighten those ones in the rear, and the top ones are those 4 pin in the neck 4 bolts are the hardest one. You have to hand tighten them first and go through a slow process of tightening as much as you can with your hands before you start having to use a 12 spiner to tighten it. Remember, it's a tight spot, so you have to take your time to do that. And don't forget, there is a hose back here that is attached to this guy. It's a antifreeze hose. One is at the bottom. I put that back, and then the second one was the one we moved it back up here. I didn't put that back. Here it is. So the second one, I'm gonna go ahead. What you don't want to forget is to forget any hose on that you unplug and don't plug it back. That could be a disaster when you start the car. And usually I try to go through checking and double checking, making sure nothing is left unconnected. So this second hose, especially with hoses, and it goes right there. Just slide it right back. Slide that right back in there. And I'm going to use the plier to put the clamps back on. And I will finish tightening up those screws that are hand tight and put those bolts that are hand tight. Finish putting the other two bottom pieces in there. And once I tighten that is secured, the mount secured, then I can start to put the rest of the wiring INS back together. Okay, where were we? You see this mount back here? That one? You have to put that mount in before you tighten those 4 bolts, but even before you tighten them by hands. The reason being is, while this bolt is this mount bolt is facing downward, so if you don't do it before you put these 4 bolts in, it's gonna be facing downward, and it's gonna be hard to get any 10-inch spinner or wrench to tighten it up. So you kind of have to do it, at least get it as tightened by hands as much as possible before you start mounting the rest of the 4 screws, and then finally the mount behind the air intake manifold here. That you have to tighten all those by hand first to get it started, and tighten it by hand as much as possible, especially these 4 bolts, that one, and the 2 on the bottom. They need to be hand tight to make sure that they are in alignment before you start to tighten everything hard. So then you put back this wiring harness. It's sitting on a little mount that we use a flat blade screwdriver to take it out. So you slide that back in. It doesn't need any tool to slide it back in. And you can't go wrong because these are not interchangeable. Even if you try to switch it around, it wouldn't go in. And don't force it. If it doesn't go in, then it doesn't go there. So when you get the right one, it slides right in, and you hear a click. That's the wiring harness secured. And don't forget, you have a hose back here that you need to slide back into the air intake manifold, and I have to put that clip back. I'll slide that back with a plier. And there is another one here. See these? Slide that one too back. So those 2 are slide back in, and I'm gonna use a plier to slide the lock that locks it in. So that's the hardest part of all of this job, is putting that air intake manifold back. Taking it out is a pain, putting it back on is a pain. Those are the 2 hardest part of it. But again, like I said, once you can just be patient, and the process is easy once you understand the process and which other things go. This hose right here goes in here. All of these hoses, I need to put the clamps back on. And if you remember, there is a mounting plate right here. There's a mounting plate right here that goes here. The screw is there. I have to take that screw out. I'll take the bolt out, right? I keep calling it screw. Take the bolt out. I had to do this with one hand. That shows how easy it could be. And tighten it back. And I'm not a lefty. I'm a right hand. Right hand is my strongest suit. So using my left hand to do this hand tight shows you how easy it is. And this, you have to take the bolt, the nut out, slide that into that hole. But I'm not going to do that because I need to tighten this a little harder, and that's using a 10. So we're going to go back. This guy is the one that has been using the most. It's a 10 and a 12. A 10 millimeter and a 12 millimeter is all the bolts that I've had to take out and put back in on this car. That's the 2 ones you need the most. Put that back, and let's use the clamp plier is not actually the best tool to grab the clamp, because the clamp is three prongs, so the needle nose is too, it's not very effective. So we use the flat vice grip here. If I can do this, I have faith that you could definitely do this. That's it. Put that clamp on. So we'll go back and put the clamp on these two that we put back in here. So you cannot see that there. Anyway, I'm gonna put the video down. I'm gonna clamp these because I need both hands. So I put back all the wiring harness. These, the bottom piece, that is this one is remounted. This piece too, I put that back, and don't forget to plug these back in. It mounts up here, and you plug that back in, and that's pretty much all the wiring harness that we took apart. We'll double check all the hoses, make sure the clamps are on. All the clamps are on. Yeah, there was one at the bottom back here. Yep, the clamp is back on it. So, in fact, that clamp's gotta go on. That's the clamp. That you can see the clamp. It's back on. So all the clamps are back on. The job is almost done now. Now we'll go back and put this guy back. Remember, the way we had to put it in is we slide this back in there. Slide in, and remember it has a hose that is stand out here, and we'll put that back, and remember to put the clamp back on, and that's all that is clamped to this guy. And I have to tighten this screw back to make that tight, but before I do that, I'm gonna reseat the air intake. We have our air filter here, and remember we had unplugged these, so we're going to plug them back. It's back in. This will slide that back into the hook where it belongs. So we're at the final stage. Just put the cover back on. I double checked everything. Make sure all hoses are connected. Everything is mounted back the way we started. So that's it. I would say the time it takes to do this for an amateur is about 4 hours. I would say about 4 hours to get it done. Again, this is not for someone who doesn't want to really get their hands dirty. But if you're the type that you do, stuff on your car, changing oil, air filters, and changing regular belts and stuff, like just minor stuffs that is not, when I say minor, not too easy but not too difficult. Basic tools can do it. You don't need to lift any engine. You could do this job. It's relatively easy. The hardest part is those bolts back there with the air intake manifold.